Welcome to the open mic. Imagine taking your abuser to court to protect your child.
Right, doing everything you were supposed to do.
Exactly. You watch them literally confess to violent assault right there on the stand.
Under oath.
Under oath, yeah. And then you watch the judge just, hand them primary custody anyway.
It sounds totally fabricated, like a dystopian legal thriller or something.
It really does. It's the kind of movie plot where you find yourself yelling at the screen because the logic is just so unbelievably broken.
Yeah, you think, there's no way this happens in real life.
But in the Irish family court system, it isn't a movie plot at all. It is exactly what happened to a mother named Jennifer.
Which is just devastating.
It is. So welcome to this deep dive, everyone. Today, we are stepping away from, theoretical law, and we're looking at the terrifyingly murky reality of a system that is fundamentally built and funded, by the way, to protect vulnerable individuals.
Right.
But somehow, it managed to achieve the exact opposite of its mandate here.
Yeah, it shatters the foundational myth most of us hold about the justice system.
Oh, completely.
We all sort of operate under this collective assumption that if a flaw is identified, especially a massive glaring flaw like an open admission of violence, the system will just automatically course correct, right?
You'd assume so. You'd think bells would ring and alarms would go off.
Exactly, to ensure safety. But our mission today, for you listening, is to adopt the analytical perspective of a legal reform advocate. We need to rigorously unpack the mechanics of this specific case to understand, how the machinery of the court actually allowed this to happen.
And we are grounding our conversation today in a profoundly impactful source. It's an article published in the Daily Mail.
A really heavy read.
Extremely heavy. It was written by Debbie McCann. And before we even get into the timeline of events, there are two critical details about Jennifer and her ex-partner that completely reframe how you might typically view a family court battle.
Right. These aren't just background facts.
No, not at all. They are the structural pillars of the whole power dynamic we're about to explore. So, detail number one. Jennifer is currently training to be a barrister.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
It means we are not talking about someone who is easily intimidated by legal jargon or, confused by the procedural maze of the courtroom.
She gets it.
She gets it. She possesses a deep academic and highly practical understanding of the law. She knows how to file motions. She understands evidentiary standards. And she knows the language the court speaks.
And then there's detail number two. And this is where the power dynamic takes a really sharp turn. Her ex-partner, the man she is fighting in court, is a Garda.
And an Irish police officer.
Exactly. So you have, the theoretical academic knowledge of the law on one side.
And the literal state-sanctioned enforcement of the law on the other.
Complete with the badge and the uniform.
Yeah, it creates this immediate palpable tension. You are basically watching a collision of two completely different types of legal authority.
And as we dive into this case study, we're going to see how fraught with contradictions this intersection truly is.
And how it challenges our most basic assumptions about what justice actually looks like in practice.
Right. So let's start with the foundation of Jennifer's story. The core fact pattern laid out in the article is just shocking in its bluntness.
Yeah, there is no sugarcoating it.
No. Jennifer lost custody of her son to her Garda ex-partner. She had accused this man of horrific physical and emotional abuse. But the detail that forces you to just stop and reread the page, the detail that breaks the brain of anyone expecting a logical judicial outcome, is that the ex-partner actually admitted to assault in the family court.
He admitted it.
He didn't plead the fifth. He didn't say, she's making it up. He admitted it.
And from a legal reform perspective, that admission is the absolute crux of the systemic failure here.
How so?
Well, the immediate question is how a court reconciles an admission of violence with an award of custody. The entire singular purpose of family court in custody disputes is to determine the best interests and the safety of the child.
Right. But I am just stuck on this admission of assault, though. If you are listening to this right now, you are probably thinking, wait, there must be something missing.
Right. A judge wouldn't just ignore an assault without a reason.
Exactly. In criminal court, an admission of assault is a conviction. It is game over. You don't pass go. So why is family court treating a violent crime like it's some minor, irrelevant character flaw?
That is the multi-million-dollar question. And the answer is because family court and criminal court operate on fundamentally different legal philosophies and different time horizons, too.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So criminal court looks backward. It basically asks, did you commit this specific act in the past beyond a reasonable doubt?
And if yes, you are punished.
Exactly. But family court looks forward. It is entirely predictive. It operates on the standard of the best interests of the child, and it asks, what is the most stable arrangement going into the future?
Stable. But how does a judge look at a self-admitted assaulter and see stability for the future?
It's wild, I know.
I mean, that requires a massive logical leap. Jennifer herself says in the article, and I quote, "I struggle to understand how someone who admitted assault in family court could then be entrusted with custody."
It completely defies the fundamental logic of consequence.
It's like failing your driving test because you intentionally crashed the car into a wall, but the examiner just hands you a license anyway because, I don't know, they didn't like the passenger's tone of voice.
That is actually a shockingly accurate analogy.
But how does the legal system justify this? What framework allows a judge to just look past admitted violence?
The mechanism here is compartmentalization.
Okay.
In a functioning legal framework, an admission of assault should act as a definitive, uncrossable boundary when you're assessing a parent's capacity to provide a safe environment.
Obviously.
But what we see happening in family courts is the siloing of violence. The court looks at the admitted assault, categorizes it as, quote, adult-on-adult conflict that happened in the past. Yeah, and decides it is a separate, isolated variable that does not necessarily disqualify the perpetrator from being a primary caregiver in the future.
I have to push back on that framework because it assumes violence is context dependent.
Right, which it isn't.
It assumes a person who uses physical violence to control a partner will somehow magically switch off those abusive tendencies when dealing with a child. That is just not how human psychology works at all.
No, of course not.
If someone has a proven admitted history of severe emotional dysregulation and violence, how does the system justify putting a vulnerable child in their primary care?
The justification, and this is a major focus for legal reform advocates, almost always relies on another legal argument being introduced to eclipse the violence.
To change the subject, basically.
Exactly. The system allows the narrative to be hijacked. The judge is essentially handed a competing theory that provides a convenient excuse to look past the assault.
Which makes the irony of Jennifer's initial intent so much more devastating to think about.
Absolutely.
Because she didn't just stumble into this court battle. According to the article, she stated explicitly, "I left an abusive relationship because I did not want him growing up believing that abuse was normal or acceptable."
She made the agonizing, terrifying decision to blow up her entire life, to go through the grueling process of separation, specifically to protect her son.
She took the exact steps society tells victims of abuse to take.
Right. Think about the public health messaging around domestic violence. We tell victims to identify the danger, remove themselves and their children from the proximity of the abuser, and engage with the legal system to formalize that protection.
Her motivation was purely 100% protective.
And yet,
in trying to protect him, I lost the child I was trying to keep safe. That is a direct quote from Jennifer.
it's heartbreaking.
She tried to shield him from an environment of violence, and the system essentially picked her son up and placed him right back into the hands of the person who admitted to being violent.
The profound failure here is that the court twisted her protective actions against her.
Yeah.
And to understand how an admitted abuser walks out of a courtroom with custody, while the protective parent walks out empty-handed, we really have to look closely at the specific accusation the defense weaponized against Jennifer.
We need to examine the lever that was pulled to strip her of her child.
Exactly.
So, to understand how the court justified this massive contradiction, we have to talk about parental alienation.
Right. This is the key mechanism.
According to the source material, this was the specific accusation used against Jennifer. So let's break down the mechanics of this. What exactly is parental alienation, and how did it even originate as a legal strategy?
Well, the concept of parental alienation essentially describes a process where one parent supposedly manipulates or brainwashes a child into showing unwarranted fear, disrespect, or hostility towards the other parent. The theory is that the, quote, alienating parent is psychologically programming the child to reject the target parent without any legitimate justification.
On paper, in a vacuum, if someone is maliciously brainwashing a kid to hate a perfectly loving, safe parent out of pure spite, you can kind of see why a court would want to intervene.
In theory, yes.
But we are not in a vacuum here. In Jennifer's case, we are not talking about a safe, loving parent being falsely maligned. We're talking about a man who admitted to assault.
Right.
How does a claim of alienation even survive contact with an admission of violence?
It survives because it acts as a legal misdirection. It is like a magician waving a bright red flag in the judge's face to distract from what is happening in the other hand.
Look over here, not at the assault.
Exactly. When a mother points to physical evidence or admissions of abuse, the abuser's legal team counters by claiming, oh, she is just making this up to alienate me from my child.
Wow.
And they say any fear the child shows is purely because she is coaching them to fear me.
So it takes the very evidence of the abuse, the victim's fear, the child's trauma, and just twists it to make the protective mother look like the true danger.
It flips the script entirely.
The article highlights a detail that honestly makes my blood run cold. It notes that Jennifer's son expressed fear of his father to professionals on a number of occasions.
Yeah, let's really analyze the weight of that word. Professionals.
Okay.
We are not talking about a child casually mentioning they prefer one parent's house over the other during a passing conversation with an aunt or something.
Right.
The child expressed fear to individuals who are specifically trained to assess child welfare. Social workers, child psychologists, court-appointed guardians.
These are people whose entire career is based on spotting coaching, right?
Yes. Understanding the nuances of a child's psychological state and differentiating between genuine trauma and implanted narratives, they know what to look for.
And despite independent trained experts documenting this fear, the article says those concerns carried little weight in the family courts.
None at all, practically.
I am struggling to map the logic here. Why would a judge disregard the documented professional assessment of a child's genuine fear?
Because once the specter of parental alienation is introduced into the courtroom, it operates like a cognitive virus.
A cognitive virus.
Yeah, it infects how all subsequent evidence is viewed by the court. The judge begins to look at the child's genuine, documented fear, not as corroborating evidence of the father's abuse, but as proof of the mother's successful manipulation.
That's terrifying.
It is. The professional testimony is totally neutralized. The judge assumes the child is acting fearful simply because the mother has alienated him so thoroughly.
That puts the mother in an impossible bind.
A total catch-22.
If her child is terrified and she reports it, she is accused of alienation.
Right.
But if she doesn't report it, she is failing to protect her child from an abuser, which they'll also use against her. It leads me to a really disturbing thought about the legal status of the child in these scenarios. If a professional evaluator hears genuine fear, but the court just dismisses that fear as alienation programmed by the mother, aren't we basically rendering the child's own voice entirely legally mute?
Yes, and it goes beyond making them mute. It actively gaslights them on an institutional level.
Wow.
Think about it. The child says, I am afraid of this person. And the court essentially responds, no, you aren't. Your feelings aren't real. They were implanted in your head by your mother.
That is so deeply damaging.
From a legal reform perspective, stripping a child of their agency and their lived reality like that is one of the most egregious failures of the family court system.
We are telling a traumatized child that their internal alarm system is broken.
Exactly.
And that the state knows their mind better than they do. And the catastrophic result is that the mother loses custody for trying to give a legal voice to that exact alarm system.
It's a profound injustice.
But we cannot look at this legal strategy in isolation, because the parental alienation argument didn't succeed purely on its own academic merits here.
No, it didn't.
It was deployed within a very specific, heavily weighted context of power.
Right. The dynamics outside the courtroom fundamentally altered the physics inside the courtroom.
Which brings us directly back to the ex-partner's profession. He is a Garda. He represents the authority of the state.
Yes.
Jennifer stated very clearly in the article, and I quote, "Throughout this process, I felt my former partner was protected by the authority of his badge and position, while my concerns and experiences were repeatedly minimized or dismissed."
That is such a crucial observation from her.
I want to really dig into the mechanics of that protection. Because the courtroom is ostensibly a level playing field, right? Governed by blind justice.
That's the ideal, yeah.
The judge wears robes to signify impartiality. But reality dictates that a police officer enters that space with a massive, invisible advantage. What is actually happening in the psychology of the courtroom when a Garda takes the stand versus when a civilian takes the stand?
Well, it is a systemic manifestation of the halo effect.
The halo effect.
Yeah, the uniform, the badge, the title, it all projects a deep-seated aura of stability, civic responsibility, and inherent truthfulness.
Even in a family court setting.
Even there, judges and police officers are, in a broad systemic sense, colleagues. They work within the same overarching apparatus of state justice. They often interact in professional capacities outside of family court disputes.
So even when an individual holding that badge stands up and explicitly admits to assault, the court is suffering from cognitive dissonance.
Absolutely.
It seems like the judge weighed the admission of violence against the cultural weight of the badge and decided the badge was just heavier.
That's exactly it. The systemic overlap creates an unconscious bias that is incredibly difficult to pierce. Plus, a police officer understands the rhythm and the unwritten rules of a courtroom.
Right, they do this all the time.
They testify for a living. They know how to present themselves as calm, logical, and deeply reasonable, even while their legal team is deploying devastating manipulative mechanisms like parental alienation claims.
Wait, play that out for me. How does that contrast actually look in real time during a hearing?
Imagine the contrast the judge is seeing. Jennifer comes into court terrified, fighting for her child's physical safety, carrying the trauma of the abuse.
Right, she's going to be anxious.
She is, understandably, highly emotional. Her distress is entirely normal for the situation she's in.
Yeah.
But her ex-partner comes in, relying on years of professional training in high-stress environments. He is completely stoic. He looks at the judge and basically says, "Look at her. She is hysterical. She is unstable. She is alienating my son."
Oh, wow. And the judge, swayed by the calm, familiar authority of the law enforcement officer, just pathologizes the victim's normal emotional reaction to trauma.
Exactly. The judge buys the performance over the documented evidence.
That is infuriating.
And rulings like this don't just destroy one family, they deeply fracture wider public trust in judicial institutions.
Because everyone else is watching this happen.
Right. If you are analyzing this as a legal reform advocate, you have to ask a terrifying question. What does it say about the impartiality of our courts if a public servant and officer tasked with upholding the law is given the benefit of the doubt in a custody dispute despite a self-admitted history of violence?
It says the system has a two-tiered architecture.
A complete double standard.
It says authority figures play by a different set of rules.
Yeah.
If you are a regular citizen looking at this outcome, your faith that the courts will protect you. If your abuser happens to hold a position of power, it just evaporates instantly.
Which is why actionable accountability is the only way forward. The source material doesn't just present Jennifer's suffering as this static tragedy. She actually offers a clear, prescriptive policy perspective.
What does she suggest?
She says, "In my view, admissions of assault and serious findings of misconduct should have significant professional consequences for anyone in a position of public trust."
She is pointing out a massive loop in the system.
A glaring one.
She is arguing that what happens in the family court shouldn't magically stay in the family court if you're a police officer.
Exactly.
If you admit to assault under oath in a civil or family proceeding, it should automatically trigger a professional review, a suspension, or a severe consequence in your career as a Garda.
The current siloing of information is a profound institutional failure.
It really is.
You cannot have an individual entrusted with the power to arrest citizens, carry weapons, and enforce the law in public, while simultaneously acknowledging in a separate legal venue that they lack the basic emotional regulation to refrain from assaulting their partner in private.
Right. It makes no sense.
Bridging that gap between civil admissions and professional oversight is a tangible, actionable step toward reform.
I see where you're going, but let me play devil's advocate and just pause on that for a second.
Sure.
Is the court intentionally, maliciously protecting the badge to avoid professional fallout for the officer? Like, is there some unwritten rule among judges to protect law enforcement? Or is it simply that the individual Garda knows exactly how to navigate, manipulate, and weaponize legal jargon better than the average civilian, regardless of what the judge wants?
It's a great question, and it rarely requires a conscious, malicious conspiracy to protect the badge.
Okay.
Systemic bias operates far more subtly through shared institutional languages and cultural affinities. The court doesn't need to consciously say, "I am going to protect this police officer."
I just lean that way naturally.
The court simply defaults to trusting the demeanor and the presentation it is most familiar with.
The stoicism.
Exactly. The officer knows what evidentiary standards the judge requires, knows how to frame the narrative, and knows how to use the alienation defense to perfectly exploit the judge's desire for a clean 50-50 resolution, or in this case, a complete reversal of custody.
And when the system validates that performance, when it rewards the abuser's manipulation while punishing the victim's plea for help, The damage extends far, far beyond Jennifer and her son.
Oh, massively.
It sends a dark, chilling signal to the rest of society, which is a broader consequence Jennifer is acutely aware of.
The societal impact is where this systemic failure morphs into a public health crisis.
Because we rely entirely on victims coming forward to stop generational cycles of violence. Right?
Exactly. Governments fund massive public awareness campaigns. They set up domestic violence hotlines. They train social workers, all to broadcast one unified message to victims.
Which is, trust us, speak out. The system will protect you.
Yes.
But then a victim sitting at home, terrified of their partner, reads Jennifer's story in the Daily Mail.
And what do they see?
They see a woman who did everything the public awareness campaigns told her to do. She left the abusive home. She engaged the legal system. She had independent, professional corroboration of her child's fear. Her abuser even openly admitted to the assault on the stand.
All the boxes checked.
All of them. And her reward for trusting the system was having her child legally confiscated and handed directly to her abuser.
You are describing the mechanics of a massive systemic chilling effect.
It's horrifying.
The logical, rational response for any victim witnessing Jennifer's case is immediate self-preservation through silence.
Because if the system demonstrably punishes you for reporting abuse by taking your children away, why on earth would you ever pull the alarm?
You wouldn't.
It's like discovering that calling the fire department guarantees the fire chief will show up and bulldoze your house while it's burning.
Exactly.
You would never pick up the phone. You would try to fight the fire yourself in secret. Because the rescue is worse than the danger.
It is a total breach of the social contract.
Right.
A justice system only functions if the public believes in its fundamental premise. Jennifer articulated this beautifully and tragically. She said, when people are told abuse will be taken seriously, they need to be able to trust that they will be protected and heard.
Which didn't happen here.
Not at all. When that foundational trust is broken so spectacularly, the justice system stops being a shield and essentially becomes complicit in the perpetuation of hidden abuse.
It traps people. It literally builds a legal wall around the abuser and hands them the only key.
Yeah.
Victims will calculate the risks, look at the family court's track record with parental alienation claims, and decide that enduring the abuse in silence is the only guaranteed way to ensure they can at least stay physically close to their child to try and protect them day to day.
And while it is vital that we analyze this from a macro societal level, the chilling effects, the need for legislative reform, the deep-seated systemic biases, we cannot let the academic analysis obscure the intimately personal devastation at the core of this case.
No, we really can't.
We need to pivot from the broad societal impact back to the everyday reality that Jennifer is now forced to endure.
I agree. I want to slow down the pace here. Because when you talk about legal mechanics, evidentiary standards, and systemic bias, it is very easy to forget the human heartbeat of this story.
Absolutely.
We're talking about a mother who has had her child legally removed from her life. When Jennifer talks about what she has lost, she doesn't focus on grand, dramatic courtroom moments.
No, she focuses on the quiet moments.
Exactly, the agonizing void of the everyday. She says the hardest part is the absence of the ordinary moments, school runs, bedtime stories, birthdays, and everyday conversations.
Those ordinary, seemingly mundane moments are the actual scaffolding of a parent-child relationship.
They are everything.
They are the thousands of micro-interactions where trust is built, where a child learns emotional regulation, where values are transmitted, and where love is demonstrated consistently over time.
And when the state violently severs that connection, based on a manipulated legal theory, it doesn't just remove the child's physical presence.
No, it creates a profound, echoing void in the daily rhythm of the parent's life.
It is the silence in the kitchen in the morning. It is driving past the local primary school and having to look the other way.
It's heartbreaking.
And what makes this specific type of loss so incredibly heavy is Jennifer's realization of the absolute irreplaceable nature of time. She states in the article, knowing that time with your child can never be replaced. Those moments are gone and they cannot be recovered.
From a psychological perspective, Jennifer is experiencing a very specific, exceptionally agonizing type of grief known as ambiguous loss.
Ambiguous loss. Let's unpack that term for the listeners. How is ambiguous loss different from the grief we traditionally understand?
Well, traditional grief usually follows a final definitive event, like a death.
Right.
There's a terrible finality to it, but society has rituals for it, and eventually There is a path to closure. Ambiguous loss occurs when there is no closure. You are grieving a loved one who is still alive, but legally, politically, or psychologically out of your reach.
The person is there, but not there. So every single passing day is another lost milestone. It is another day of character development, another scraped knee, another new friend made that the mother is legally barred from witnessing or guiding.
And the timeline of childhood is painfully short to begin with.
Right, and the court has essentially confiscated years of it.
Confiscated those years and handed them to a man who admitted to assault.
God.
The ongoing psychological weight of knowing your child is in the primary care of an admitted abuser, while you are legally paralyzed from intervening, is crushing.
I can't even imagine.
But what is truly heartbreaking is that Jennifer isn't just grieving her own loss of time. She is deeply, profoundly worried about the long-term emotional consequences for her son. The article highlights what she calls her greatest sadness.
Right, she says, the greatest sadness is knowing that one day I may have to help my son understand what happened.
That quote stops you in your tracks.
It really does. It speaks volumes about the enduring generational trauma inflicted by the family court system. The judge might have banged the gavel and closed the file, but the emotional fallout is going to last for decades.
The court's decision forces a secondary layer of trauma onto the future.
How so?
Well, Jennifer knows that her son is growing up potentially internalizing the narratives fed to him by the alienation defense. He is potentially enduring further trauma in that environment.
And she knows that one day, when he is an adult and no longer subject to custody orders, he is going to come to her and ask questions.
Exactly. I want you to really think about the weight of that impending conversation.
It's unimaginable. How do you even begin to draft that future dialogue in your mind? How do you explain to your grown child that a judge heard his father admit to violence, heard independent professionals report the child's fear, and still decided the child was better off with the abuser?
It's so hard.
How do you explain a fundamentally broken system to a victim of that system without sounding exactly like the bitter, alienating parent the court falsely accused you of being in the first place?
It is an almost impossible psychological tightrope to walk.
Right, because you want to validate their childhood trauma.
You want to tell them the truth about what you tried to do, and you want to offer them the protection they were denied. But you are also dealing with the massive psychological damage inflicted by years of enforced separation.
Yeah.
The legal system, through its catastrophic failure, has forced a mother to pre-grieve a conversation she desperately hopes she can one day have, while simultaneously fearing the developmental damage that will have been done to her son in the interim.
It is emotional devastation on every conceivable level. The original trauma of the abuse, the betrayal by the very system designed to help, the daily ambiguous loss of the child, the fear for his current safety, and the dread of the future reckoning.
Most people would shatter under a fraction of that weight.
I know I would.
Yeah.
But here is where Jennifer's story completely refuses to conform to a standard narrative of total defeat.
Yes, exactly.
Despite being run through this institutional meat grinder, her story is not ending in surrender.
Her response to this systemic failure is perhaps the most remarkable aspect of her character. She exhibits a profound, unyielding refusal to accept the court's narrative as the final word.
The article closes with a vow from Jennifer that is incredibly powerful. She says, I will never stop fighting for my son, for accountability, and for the truth to be heard.
She's so strong.
When you look at how comprehensively the system crushed her, where does that reserve of energy even come from? How do victims maintain any sense of hope, let alone the drive to seek justice in a system that has already taken everything from them?
It comes fundamentally from the irreducible motivation of love.
Yeah.
Jennifer states her ultimate thesis in the article. My son deserves to know that everything I did was motivated by love, protection, and the belief that he deserved a life free from violence and fear.
That belief is her North Star.
Exactly. The legal system had the power to strip away her custody rights, to manipulate her words, and to enforce separation. But it lacked the power to strip away her fundamental identity as a mother fiercely dedicated to her child's ultimate safety.
And that core belief is what fuels her ongoing defiance. And she is channeling that belief into highly strategic action.
Very strategic.
Think about the steps she is taking. She didn't retreat into silence. She spoke to the Daily Mail. She stepped directly into the public eye, opening herself up to intense scrutiny, specifically to shine a harsh light on this dark, unchecked corner of the family court system.
And we have to return to the crucial detail we introduced at the very beginning of this deep dive.
Her training.
Right, she is actively training to be a barrister.
I really want to focus on that because it is an incredible detail. Going to law school is exhausting under the best of circumstances.
Let alone doing it while navigating the trauma of abuse and the loss of a child. It is staggering.
It really is.
It demonstrates how advocacy can act as a vital survival tool. By studying the law, by rigorously mastering the very procedural system that was weaponized against her, she is actively reclaiming her agency.
She is refusing to be a passive victim of the court's machinery.
Exactly. She is transforming her deeply personal, agonizing trauma into a highly educated crusade for systemic reform. She isn't just fighting for her son's case anymore.
She's fighting for everyone's case.
She is methodically preparing herself to dismantle the legal mechanisms like unchecked parental alienation claims that allowed this injustice to occur in the first place.
It is an unbelievable display of resilience. To survive horrific, intimate partner violence, to then endure the secondary institutional trauma of being legally dismantled and having your child handed to the abuser, and to still have the fortitude to say, I am going to learn the law inside and out.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak to the national press, and I'm going to force the system to be accountable. It is just awe-inspiring.
It is undeniably inspiring. But as legal reform advocates, we must strongly caution against the takeaway that resilience is the solution.
Good point.
Resilience should never be a prerequisite for basic justice.
Right.
Jennifer is an extraordinary individual, but the justice system's primary duty is to protect the ordinary, exhausted, terrified victim just as fiercely.
Absolutely.
A functioning system should not require a victim to possess superhuman fortitude, become a legal scholar, and launch a public relations crusade just to keep their child safe from a self-admitted abuser.
That brings up a massive structural issue, though. The fact that she has to be extraordinary just to fight for a baseline of safety proves how broken the baseline is.
100%.
So let's synthesize what we've unpacked in this deep dive. We started by examining a fundamental, glaring contradiction. A family court system that somehow prioritizes nebulous, highly manipulable claims of parental alienation over concrete, on-the-record admissions of physical assault.
We dissected the mechanics of how that alienation argument operates as a legal misdirection. We saw how it infects the court's perception, undermining valid abuse reports, effectively silencing the documented, genuine fears of vulnerable children, and completely neutralizing the assessments of trained, independent professionals.
We also explored the invisible shield of authority. We looked at how a Garda badge and the inherent systemic overlap between law enforcement and the judiciary creates a deeply entrenched bias.
A bias that overrides basic accountability.
Yeah, and severely damages any remaining public trust in judicial impartiality.
And crucially, we looked at the profound, echoing human cost of these abstract legal mechanisms. We examined the massive chilling effect this outcome has on future victims who now have every logical reason to fear that reporting their abuser will result in the state confiscating their children.
We explore the psychology of ambiguous loss.
The quiet, agonizing absence of everyday moments between a mother and her son.
And the heavy long-term burden of navigating a broken system's generational aftermath.
It is a stark, unavoidable reminder of the immense work that remains to be done in family court reform.
The system desperately needs to evolve.
It must prioritize objective, documented safety over easily weaponized legal theories.
And it absolutely must hold public officials accountable for violence, regardless of the venue in which they casually admit to it.
Exactly.
But why does this matter to you? Why should you, listening right now, care about the intricacies of a custody battle in an Irish family court?
Because the health of a justice system is measured by how it treats the most vulnerable within it.
Exactly. A justice system that fails a protective mother and a terrified child. A system that uses its vast institutional power to shield admitted abusers in positions of authority while actively punishing the people trying to stop the violence, is a system that fundamentally undermines the safety and the foundational trust of your entire community.
Yes.
If the basic mechanisms of justice, the very laws designed to protect us, can be so easily and thoroughly inverted, then none of us are truly protected.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as we conclude today. Consider again the fact that Jennifer is actively training to be a barrister. She has an intimate, academic, and highly practical understanding of the law that far exceeds 99% of the population. She knows the terminology, she understands the procedural rules, and she knows how to read the legal landscape.
Right.
If someone with her exceptional level of legal literacy can be completely and utterly dismantled by the family court system,
Wow.
what hope does an ordinary person with no legal training, no insider knowledge, and limited financial resources have when facing the exact same systemic machinery?
It is a terrifying question, but it's a question we absolutely have to ask and keep asking if we ever hope to force real systemic change. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structures around you, keep demanding accountability from the systems that claim to protect you, and we will be here to help you unpack the next complex issue. Take care.